guys. My name is Omar. I'm 19 years old and I'm from Toronto, Canada, currently in Vancouver, Canada. Um, and I'll be like just help facilitating the conversation that's going on today, which is government's response to what is climate change. And before we start, I just wanted to go over some of the rules so that we could have like the best possible discussion that we can have and like a good exchange of ideas. So like just some of the rules are like be respectful, be open-minded, stay calm. Even if someone has a different point of view, they have their reasons for thinking this way. I think everyone here came with the idea to exchange ideas, hopefully educate other people and be educated themselves. So we're not here to attack other people for the way they believe, what they believe, or like I guess ignorance of the subject. We're just here to have like an open, healthy dialogue. Trying your best not to interrupt, even though this is Zoom and like it's online, not in person. So don't, at the same time, don't be afraid to put in your opinion. Just, I guess, use your own judgment, personal judgment for that one. And yeah, just like try to listen to other people's point of view, give others a chance to speak, or even like invite other people to state their thoughts on the matter. Like, I would say like, if you need to go on a monologue, that's perfectly fine and express yourself the way you need to express yourself. But at the same time, try to keep it as much as a conversation as possible. Be willing to listen and try to understand others' point of view. Express your own thoughts in a respectful and clear manner. And if you're not sure whether something you want to say is offensive or not, err on the side, like don't say it. And if you do really want to say it, you could message myself or Nadia about it, and we could just help you out on that aspect. Feel free to just listen to the discussion as well. Like, we're not going to coerce you to say anything if you don't have like any specific opinions on the matter, and be willing to learn from others. Like, that's just the whole point of this whole discussion. And I would just like to ask, if you're an audience, just turn off your camera so that we know you're an audience. And if you're participating in the conversation, please turn on your camera so that we know that you are participating. And like, yeah, and also if you find that someone is being disrespectful or stepping over somebody, don't be afraid to say something. And if you don't feel like me or Nadia as facilitators are also saying like stepping in, don't be afraid to message us either. Again, we're trying to like foster a healthy talking space, so don't be afraid to also contribute to that as well. And like, does anyone have any questions about the rules? Right, we're all good to go? All right, perfect. I'll just call on people from the way I see you guys on my screen to introduce yourself. Everybody's name, age, country, and your stance on climate change. So like, I'm pretty sure everybody here knows climate change is real, but I guess like more so, I guess top contributing, like what you think needs to be tackled the most in the climate change issue. So we'll start with Mick.
Hey, thanks for the intro, and thanks for inviting me to participate in this. Hi, my name's Mick McIntyre. I'm an independent documentary filmmaker based in Sydney, Australia, and I came to this group through the film that we made called Kangaroo, a love-hate story, which we had a fantastic screening tour throughout the US, where I was very lucky to be hosted in Portland, which was a sellout screening. And go Portland! What a great progressive city Portland is. Making the film Kangaroo, a love-hate story, for me uncovered a lot of issues about my own country, Australia. And what it did was it uncovered the largest wildlife slaughter on the planet, which was very shocking, and it shocked a lot of people around the world. But I know we're not here to talk about kangaroos, but what we learned in making the film was just the effect that climate change is happening, that climate change is having in Australia. And we really found, just, if you want an example of what is happening with climate change around the world, you only have to look at the continent of Australia. Basically, it is a dry continent that the droughts are getting longer and more frequent. And as a result, that's affecting our entire way of being. And so I'm sure a lot of you saw the recent horrible fires that we had in our summer at the beginning of 2020. And that really hit home to a lot of people, just how much drier and how much hotter Australia really is. So it's become a matter of urgency for Australia. And I know that one of the things that we're talking about today is government's reaction to this emergency. And unfortunately, we have a conservative government here in Australia that model themselves on the Trump administration is probably a good way to describe them, and have somehow decided that fossil fuels are still the answer. So we can get into that in more detail, but that's basically Australia's position at the moment, despite being one of the sunniest countries, one of the windiest countries, and coastline of an incredible tidal opportunity. Somehow those renewable options aren't being taken seriously by the government. So yeah, but as I said, the evidence is there in Australia.
Thank you, Mick, for the introduction. Also, that sucks. That just generally sucks. Rebecca, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure. Thank you so much for such a great intro, Omar. And I am Becky Jenkins, I use she, her pronouns. I'm also actually in Vancouver, BC. So that's cool that you're here too. That's nice. I'm originally from Ireland, but I moved here via Portland, Oregon about a year ago. I am 28 years old. Climate change. Yeah, certainly very concerned about it also, kind of echoing a lot of what Mick said, and thank you for sharing that about Australia. It's really a country I don't follow enough, I think, or keep up on enough. So yeah, really concerned about, of course, you know, I know Ravencore is very interested in and concerned about animal agriculture's contribution to climate change. I'm of course also very concerned about fossil fuel consumption, which Mick also alluded to, and just generally speaking, like corporate responsibility for climate change. So I guess, you know, I think it's wonderful that there's so many kind of initiatives towards, you know, consumers making better choices or more sustainable choices. But I'm kind of concerned that, you know, my own home country in Ireland, that's a little bit too much of the government message, is kind of putting all the onus on individuals, whereas really the corporate responsibility is just so huge. So I think that was there any other questions in terms of the intro? Did I hit on everything?
I think that was, yeah, no, you answered it. It's okay.
Cool.
Actually, I'll add another question for Mick, Becky, and everybody else. What time is it for you guys as well right now?
Well, I'm in the same time zone as Omar, and I think lots of our friends in Portland here. So it's 4:13 p.m.
It's 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but as I said earlier, we just like to be ahead in Australia, so.
Yeah, I could see that. Oh my God. So Cami, you're next.
So I'm Cami. I'm the youth director of the Ravencore. I'm from San Diego area. Right now I'm in Bellingham, Washington for college. I'm 19. I'm still not entirely, it's hard to say like what I think is the most important to tackle in terms of climate change stuff. I'll just go with like one that I think about a lot, which is just our food system, and how wildly inefficient and inequitable and unsustainable it is. And I also recently learned, just as like an aside, because it's relevant, that 4 more years of Trump could delay global emission cuts by like a decade, not just because of what our country would do, but because that would like signal to other countries, it would be like a good excuse for inaction. So there's a lot of different fronts, I think, for climate change, for things to tackle. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually kind of disheartening, to be honest. But thanks for your introduction, Cami. Lorna, you're up next.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be meeting with you and seeing your beautiful faces. These are like the good things of technology. So my name is Lorena Munoz. I'm originally from Bolivia. I'm in Bolivia right now, in La Paz. It's 7:15 right now here, PM. So yeah, well, I'm 40 years old. My journey was kind of funny because I started being a lawyer and I worked as a corporate lawyer. Well, I worked in human rights, corporate law, intellectual property for about 10 years. And then when I went into intellectual property, I was sick of it. I was like, I'm gonna die. Like, I think I'm miserable. So I was in the desk job like 8 hours a day and I was like, I hated it. So I said, like, I have to look something I'm passionate about. And that's when I went to the US and I got my bachelor's degree in canine studies. Actually, dogs are my thing, like my joy in life. So, and after I finished the bachelor's degree, I heard about the master's in animal law. So that's how I met Claire, Becky, like, and a bunch of people. So it's, well, the topic today is, it's quite difficult, climate change, because I think it's an existential threat right now. And I think it's like not being taken nearly as seriously as it should. I think it's something that, if something I think this virus has shown us is how connected we are. So everybody in the world is feeling it right now. So my hope was that this was going to be a wake-up call and be like, oh, wow, like whatever I do here in this little town on the planet affects everyone. But apparently it was like that the first month or the first 2 months. And now it's kind of like, I feel a little bit disheartened because I don't see that it's changing. I see that we're going back to our old ways and I don't see the change we need to. So it's kind of concerning because the people in power too, I think there are economic interests that are always above doing what's right. And I think that's going to be very difficult to change. And yeah, political interests, the groups in power are always like have their interests. And countries like Bolivia, for example, which is an underdeveloped country, has extra challenges with some things. Like we are on our way of developing. So it's very difficult to tell people here, for example, to be conscious of climate change, of protecting nature when they're like in a path of development, which they link with mining and constructing roads and destroying wood, land. So people are still starving. So it's difficult to balance, I think, all those like the climate change, protection of nature, and like in a developing country especially. So yeah, that's like the perspective I would like to bring to this conversation and to take into account, like there are different realities, I think, in each country, but I think we have to find solutions between all of us.
Thank you for like your introduction. Also, it's very insightful, especially like the economic interest part. I don't know. I'm gonna put this out there, guys. Watch The Social Dilemma. It's a really good documentary, and one of the quotes from the documentary actually is, "We're not gonna like solve a lot of the problems as long as like we live in a society that values a dead tree over a living tree." So like that was very like it's very true, right? Like as long as we live in a capitalistic society that values getting a profit before taking care of our earth, is it's hard to like go far with it. But thank you for your introduction, Lorna. Rowan, you're up next.
Hey y'all, I haven't come to one of these before. I'm new. I'm 17. I'm from Gresham, right outside of Portland, with the Ravens. And I'm vegan, and my stance on climate change is we need to be doing any and everything we can do. Like, as an individual, every single person needs to sit down and ask themselves, like, what fronts can I fight on? Like, what is my limitations? What are my abilities? You know, we shouldn't blame ourselves for not being able to do more and not being bigger than the system we're a part of. But we can all look within ourselves and assess our biggest contributions to climate change and the systems around us that we're a part of and the systems around us that we can oppose. If you never had a kid, you would way cut down your eco footprint. But that being said, that's like a family choice and that's a personal choice. If you never ate any kind of animal agriculture product, you would significantly lower your emissions. You wouldn't zero out, but it would do a big change. If you never traveled ever, if you didn't take airplane flights, if instead of vacations you had staycations or you took biking trips, you would significantly lower your eco footprint, especially if you live in a first world nation. Or if you never drove, if you instead stuck to public transportation or like personal powered transportation like biking or walking, you would significantly lower your impact. And the last thing you can do is stop buying new stuff. If you can, except for the things you have to buy new, like underwear and food, like if you can stop buying stuff manufactured, but instead use stuff that you can make yourself or that can be reused, that will significantly lower your impact. And how far away all of these things are going, you know, whether it's how far you drive to work every day, how far you're traveling, how far it takes for your food or your stuff to get to your house, also is going to put a bigger eco footprint on you. And what you need to do is localize and minimize. And for everybody, what you can do is going to be different. And for every nation, even what they should be expected to do should be different. But those are the fronts that we can change stuff on how we get places, how we get stuff, what stuff we use. And that's basically it. I think I've talked.
No, actually, everything you said, I 100% yes to everything that you're saying. I think like it's important to realize like it is a global effort as well as like an individual effort as well. We need to try to tackle climate change on all fronts, not just like, you know, like some aspects F it, other aspects, yeah. Like we have to do our best in everything that we could do. Thank you for your
Another thing you can do is vote. Just tell your government to do it for you. If that sounds like a lot of work, an easy thing is just voting for someone who says they're going to do it for you. Get out there and vote.
Thank you, Rowan, for your introduction. Next up is Kemi.
Hi, I'm Kimmy. I'm 19. Pronouns are she, her. I'm from the US. I'm in San Diego County, California. It is currently 4:23 p.m. on Tuesday, and my stance on climate change is a lot like Rowan's. I think it's not only on an individual level, but it's also on a global level. But I think with us focusing on the individual and making sure that we do what we can in order to prevent future generations from having to deal with the mistakes that we've made, I think it's really important to focus on what we're doing and not be as critical of what everybody else around us is doing, because we don't understand everything that's going on in someone else's life. And I think we have to take that into consideration, because I know for so many people it's easy for them to point at others when we also have to evaluate what we're doing ourselves, and we have to make sure that what we're doing is what what we're practicing is what we preach. That's what I meant to say. So yeah.
I see you, Rowan. Okay. Thank you, Kimmy, for your introduction. I would, again, echo the sentiments 100%. Next up is Georgia.
Hi, I'm Georgia. I am 15 years old. I am part of the Banff Raven Chorus led by the lovely Emily. um, and my stance on climate change, I believe priorities are a big thing. Kind of like what Lorena was saying, was that we have a lot of issues right now. We have like poverty, we have world hunger, we have like Black Lives Matter, and we have climate change and so much more. My stance on it, I think that all world problems are equal, but I feel like climate change should probably be close to number one because we can't fix the problems if we don't have a world to fix them on. That's my stance on it. I'm also vegetarian. Vegan's a little hard because of my family, and just it's really hard. But I definitely support. I'm not gonna get angry at people who aren't vegetarian, but I definitely encourage a more plant-based diet because it definitely does help. Oh, and my time right now is 5:26. So thank you.
Thank you for being here, Georgia. And I appreciate the introduction. Next up is Emma.
Hi, my name is Emma. I'm part of the Banff Raven Corps. I'm 16. I'm also with Georgia. It's 5:26 is here as well. I feel like Georgia and I have a pretty similar stance on climate change. I mean, obviously, I think all the issues that are going on in the world right now are extremely important, but I do think that, like, what are we going to do about them if we don't have a world to fix them in? Yeah, I agree with Georgia for most of those points. And I think that there's things that we can do personally to help our own, like it's a harder, bigger, more overwhelming issue if we're focusing on the world's climate change rather than individually what we can do in our own communities or countries or just areas in general. But yeah, I think that's my opinion on it.
Sorry, just had to switch rooms. Thank you, Emma. And yeah, I think everyone here is in agreement with that for sure. And then I think last up is Emily.
Hey guys, I'm here. My camera's off because my Wi-Fi is very bad. And if there's an echo, it's because I'm in my basement where the Wi-Fi is best. Sorry about that. Anyways, tell me if you can't hear me, but I'm Emily. I'm 16. Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm the lead raven in Banff, which is in Alberta, Canada. And she, her pronouns. And in terms of my stance on climate change, I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. I'd like to add to the conversation. I'm really tired of environmentalism and taking care of our planet being trendy, with like zero waste and like kind of like extreme like thrift shopping, and plastic and like bamboo straws. And sorry, I'm tired of it being like capitalized on, like the environmental movement being capitalized on, because it kind of just keeps the whole system in swing, everything in production. That's where I'm at. But I will recognize it's a good way to spread information. But yeah, I think my intro has been long enough, so I'll give it back to you, Homa.
Thank you. And snap, 110% agree. Like, it definitely, capitalism is creating the problem. I don't think it's the solution to the problem. But thank you for your introduction. I just want to, and it's okay if your Wi-Fi isn't working, that's why you can't turn on your camera, but everybody else who is participating, please keep your camera on. And if you can't, just message me privately. But yeah. So thank you everybody for your introductions. A lot of insightful stuff to take in, actually. Gonna be thinking a lot after this. But just to start off the conversation, do you guys think the Paris Agreement is a realistic plan to tackle climate change? And if anyone wants like me to give like a small summary of the Paris Agreement, that's okay. If not, I guess discuss amongst yourself. And anybody could speak up if you want. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy, or else I'm going to start calling names.
If nobody else wants to go, I'm happy to jump in. But I think somebody else, I can't remember who it was, mentioned this piece about, but anyway, I'll just say it again. So I guess my thoughts of the Paris Agreement, and I'm not like a climate scientist, or and I haven't spent as much time focusing on the details of it as I would like to. But I guess from my limited understanding, I think it seems like a good starting place and like a bare minimum for all countries to sign on to, especially countries who are really disproportionately contributing to the problem, like the United States or Ireland. I'll speak for myself, also Ireland. So I do think it's a great bare minimum, and I'm glad to see that there's that action, at the global level. I think it raises it to a certain consciousness among individuals also, when you have those kinds of international agreements. One thing I learned about a couple of weeks ago that I thought I would share, many of you are probably familiar with this, but I wasn't until a few weeks ago. I went to, so I used to work at the Green Party of Ireland, and I went to the Just Transition Greens, which is like a left affiliate group of the Green Party in Ireland, their AGM, and they were talking about how the Green Party is now in government in Ireland in a coalition with some centrist parties. And their thoughts on it was that our commitments in Ireland aren't going far enough, because to Lorena's point and some other people's points, there are other countries in the world who just have not contributed to these problems as much and cannot contribute as much to the solutions because they have other problems, like huge problems, like people starving, as Lorena said. And so the Just Transition Greens wanted Ireland to follow suit with some other countries who had offered to go even further than what was being asked of them by the Paris Accord. So kind of taking like a climate justice approach that, some countries who can, any country who can, should be doing as much as they can to give a bit more leeway to countries in the like global south, or whatever you want to describe it as. So that's kind of my thought, I guess, in summary, that it's a good like starting point and it's a good baseline, but that we can't get complacent. We have to be really kind of aggressive in our pursuit of climate justice, especially the countries who have contributed the most, and especially as well, I would say, like the corporations who have contributed the most, many of whom are not even paying taxes in Ireland. So that's a whole other issue. But, they're contributing to the climate crisis in Ireland, and they're paying sweet F all in terms of taxes. So they're really not contributing in any meaningful way. So anyway, that's my little summary, that I think, yeah, it's great, could go further, and I guess developed nations especially need to go even further from my point of view, but with the disclaimer that I'm no expert on this topic.
I wanted to compliment what Becky was saying. Like, I feel, first of all, I think you have to take into account that international relationships and diplomacy is like all of us agreeing on a flavor of pizza here. Can you imagine how difficult it would be? So if you join together like hundreds of countries with their own interests and everything, it's almost impossible to reach agreements. So it's always frustrating for me, at least. Like, so these agreements don't go nearly as far as most of the countries would like it, but you have to compromise. And it's like Becky said, a bare minimum. I think it's awful that one of the most powerful countries in the world left the agreement. The message is pretty much like, you deal with it, people. Like, it's an awful message, because even if it's not perfect, I think it's a beginning. Like, it's like Becky said, it's a bare minimum. And I think another important thing is to understand that laws are perfectible. They are dynamic agreements too. So it's not like it's written in stone and it cannot be improved on. So I think it's a lame excuse to say like, oh no, this Paris agreement is like bad and that's why we shouldn't be part of it. Like, I think it's at least a common agreement signed by most of the countries in the world. So that is like pretty impressive. And I
So
think
you're
it's,
basically saying like it's just the same thing as Becky saying is a start, just the fact that we could agree on something that's like good enough.
yeah, like I said, I'm no expert like Becky. Like I took the climate change course like with an amazing teacher like at Lewis and Clark. She is amazing. And she has devoted her life like to the climate change and green initiatives and everything. But it's like we went through the Paris Accord and everything, but like I said, it can be extremely frustrating because even agreeing on the slightest things is almost impossible. Like joining all the countries and like getting them to sign that was really an achievement in itself. So I think at least it's like, okay, we're in the same boat. We can recognize that we are like in the same planet. So let's at least start with this. So I think it's a good beginning. It's not perfect at all. Like it has a lot of things to improve. And the problem is like you cannot, you have the statements there, but if a country doesn't meet like the quota they put, for example, in emissions and things, there is no real like, okay, now all the countries we can like punish this country and say like you have to do this. There's no way of doing that.
Yeah, like I mean, from understanding the Paris Accord, like how it differed from the Kyoto Protocol, is that there was no like legal punishments for not meeting certain goals. It's just they wanted to monitor and I guess be more transparent with the countries instead of like forcing stuff upon them because they understood the difference between developing and developed nations, if I remembered correctly. Yeah, Mick, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think the symbolism is important, and I support the symbolism of it because it's symbolic to reach agreement. And what I think it does is it flushes out the people who aren't wanting to sign on to it, or as you know, the governments that have dropped off from the Paris Agreement. So the symbolism shines a spotlight on the issue that perhaps the issue doesn't normally get. So from that point of view, I think it's a very good thing because it really does flush out the countries that aren't doing enough, and then it gives other countries, you know, it's almost like a sounding board on where they stand. And I know we don't have anyone from Europe on this call because I know the Europeans. You know, there's countries in Europe. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. We do. Yeah, members of the EU. Well, I'm sure that you know other members of the EU. You know, are just looking at this, going, "Well, we're just going to go way further than that and discuss how the Paris Agreement isn't enough." But you know, to me, the Paris Agreement, you know, the symbolism is important.
Yeah, but like I guess my question would be like, because someone was saying like how I was talking to someone earlier and they're saying how like a lot of these things are ambitious, right? Like just the agreement in itself is kind of ambitious, like getting every country to agree upon and everything. But like, is being kind of ambitious enough in the first place? Like, do we celebrate the little victories and then be okay, like push from further, or should like I guess my question is, should we be satisfied with the little victories or continue pushing more? Yeah, you guys could speak whenever. You don't have to raise your hand.
Okay. I've been listening to a lot of what you guys have been saying, and I've also just generally been thinking a lot about this kind of stuff. And like part of what made the Paris Agreement like achievable at all, but also like never going to be enough, is the fact that there's not anything built into it as a rule enforcer. There's no penalty for not following the rules except for like shame, you know, like you just are supposed to do it. And if everybody like did it and actually tried, it would work well and like it would be enough. But because they aren't going to do that, it alone can't be enough. And basically the discussion around this, like, sort of who does the responsibility fall onto? And I hear a lot of people say it's all on the individual. At the end of the day, we're a collection of individuals, and as a collection of individuals, we need to change. And I hear other people say it's all the corporations, or like the government's job to control the corporations, because all of the emissions are being created by the corporations. But in reality, they're just still two parts of one system, and those systems in themselves are still just controlled by whoever gets to talk at you, right? Whatever you hear, whatever gets broadcast to you on TV or in ads is what your brain absorbs, is what you believe. And so if the rich people who control government and control all of our companies, who make all of these emissions, can get us to fight about whose fault it is, or like who we can get to do more, we're never going to get anything done, because we're all fighting with each other about who has to do more.
Mm.
But if we educate each other on, like, the fact that it's straight up, doing this is better for all of us. It creates more jobs. All of the Republicans who are yelling and screaming about jobs being taken away and destroyed, those job markets were dying anyway. Your free market would have killed them. The only reason they're still around at all is your government propping them up with subsidies. Yeah, that's pretty socialist. That's not free market capitalism that you're blaring out on the horns. If you wanted free market capitalism, this job would have already been gone. The new jobs are in renewable energy because we need it. There's a market for it. It's also, from a socialist point, good for people. Generally, if we can live somewhere, we can do more things. If the places we're living are being destroyed by earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, and weather that's crazy, we kind of can't do anything. And it doesn't really matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Your house is going to be destroyed, buddy. Like, it's profitable for everyone to do this, except for somebody, right? Because otherwise we all would have done it if there wasn't somebody stopping us. And that somebody is the person it's not benefiting, because this system's already benefiting them. Now, who is benefiting the most from
Sorry to cut you off. Wait, so do you think, like, I guess in terms of like the Paris Accord, they need to put more like, what would you think the next steps after the Paris Accord would be?
I think the next steps are to make the people who are currently benefiting from our system the most give back to it. Because there really isn't...
Corporations giving back to, like, how would you envision fossil fuel companies giving back to saving the environment, I guess?
Well, there's certain things like taxes on high emissions. I know America generally doesn't like retroactive laws, but I really do think a retroactive like law or bill about certain, like, money made off of destroying the environment has to be paid back in taxes. Like, people try to make government stuff sound really complicated with, like, big 4-syllable words, but when you break it down into what stuff fundamentally does, it's really just a bunch of simple pieces working with each other. Like, if the government wants something to happen that costs too much to happen normally, it gives them money to make that happen for cheaper. If the government doesn't want something to happen, it makes them pay extra money to do that thing. That's just basically like subsidies and taxes. So we have subsidies going to the coal and industry, coal and oil industry. We have subsidies going to the animal agriculture industry. We have subsidies going to the airline industry. And isn't that funny? Those are all the things that I said in my intro were the things that are destroying our planet. What the hell? Why is our government paying for those? Who even owns those companies? Who's even benefiting from those subsidies anyway?
Do you think, like, international, what is it called, agreement, and this question is open to everybody, like, could even help out with situations where corporations have like a say in the government? Or do you think there needs to be other steps besides that? Like I know Georgia and Emma were gonna say something.
Okay, I'll yield the floor right after this. I think the Paris Agreement is great because it brings the general attention to what the problem is, and if we understand the problem, we can't keep getting tricked on who is to blame. And what we have to like, what we got to do is not give rich people any more money. We can make the government do something about the rich people who are benefiting off of destroying our planet. But if we can't make the government do that because it's controlled by the rich people, we just have to stop paying them. And what stop paying them means is stop buying their shit or their stuff. I didn't curse, my bad.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I guess like just like in my question would be more like how would international agreement, like what would be the next step after Paris, or is Paris the best thing that you guys think we could do?
I think
I
we
know you could.
international taxes and tariffs on action that damages the climate because it affects everybody. It's not just affecting America, so it shouldn't just be America taxes. It affects the world. They should be world taxes, and there should be international tariffs and stuff on destroying the world.
Mhm.
I made a few notes here while you guys were talking, just so I didn't forget. I do think that it's good that we're agreeing as like a world and a bunch of countries coming together on this issue, but I also think that it's like I can't help but be a little bit mad about it because it's been happening for so long. Like I don't know, like, you know, I'm not a professional with the Paris Agreement, so I don't know exactly when it was started, but I'm sure it was later than it should have been. And I feel like about like the government doing or like whose fault it is and placing the blame, I feel like we can't really place the blame because either way it's everybody's participating, everybody's contributing. But I do think that the government should be taking lead and like giving us ways more than just like a website with information on it, like making it okay. 2016, yeah, this like climate change has been a issue for like so many years. It's been way too long that nothing has been done about it. And I think that like governments or the government and like corporations, I don't know, I feel like the government should more influence it. But just like taking lead in investing in green energy or just actions more towards just like helping the world. I think that more research should also be done. I know there's also obviously been research being done for years, but like this is a really bad example, but I'm gonna use, oh, I don't know, okay, I'm just gonna use it, but I don't mean it in any offensive way. It's just like the first example that I can come to my head. But like the research we're doing for cancer, like there's not a known cure for, I think there is for some cancers, but not for, you know, every type of cancer, but we're still going towards finding one. We're still putting money and resources towards the research to finding one, which is great. And I don't think we should do anything about it, but I just think we should kind of try and do that and take action as well. But as we're doing that research and as we're finding ways to like take down our CO2 emissions, like stuff like that, like there's no known thing that we can do that's 100% good. So I think we should be taking steps and finding ways to go in like more into that rather than focusing on, I mean, it's great that our countries are agreeing on something, but how far is it going to go? What is it going to do if they don't have any like repercussions?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, I guess like from what I understood from what you're saying was that we're not being dynamic enough. Like it's kind of static. Like we could introduce a change, but the change is coming like I guess 10 years too late, 20 years too late, when we should be more experimentative as a society. But I guess like the problem would be like, do you think the world is capable of being that experimentative? Do you think the world is capable of like implementing what is it called, new green technology as quickly as we should? Do you think we could reach the global climate changes like by 2030, by 2050, the targets by 2030 and 2050, with all of this like slow moving bureaucratic processes and stuff like that. Like, what do you guys think is realistic and would be a realistic solution, I guess?
Yeah, I feel like that's where it's gets hard. I mean, it's easy to come up with an idea and then just say, yeah, do it. But, you have to get everybody on board. I feel like it's probably not the most realistic, but I just feel like that's what we should work towards. I mean, obviously, I don't think we can get it right away, or I don't know when we can get it or how, but I feel like that's something we should work towards.
Yeah, honestly, it's okay to not have the answers. No
Yeah.
one here has the answers for
Hey,
anything.
Georgia, did you want to speak?
Sure. So I definitely think that actions speak louder than words, and I definitely think that it's great. Like everyone said, that a lot of countries have agreed that climate change is a big issue that we need to address. But there's still a lot of countries that were in the Paris Agreement who haven't quite made their goals. There's certain countries who have already exceeded their goals. I know I can't say if this is reliable information, but I know that in America specifically, how they kind of met their goals was that certain big states were doing it and other states weren't, and that's kind of how I can't explain well, but I definitely think we need a definitely more aggressive approach to it. And I know a lot of people have their own opinions on Greta Thunberg, but she definitely has a point of saying that like we can't just say like, oh, hope, there's hope out there. We have to actually take action, or else that hope will never become a reality. It's kind of my idea on it.
I agree. And I think really the question about whether or not this happens is whether or not whether or not we let them control information, or if we educate ourselves on the ways that they control our streams of information. Because the ways that small amounts of people keep control of the large majority is through regulating the information. So as long as we can maintain our individual education and we educate ourselves on these topics, and we eliminate fallacies from our beliefs and do things rationally, and especially educating yourself on propaganda, figuring out the basic ways that propaganda works helps so much to avoid being controlled by other people. And if we as a collective educate ourselves, then it won't be revolutionary. It won't be risky. It won't be experimental, because we'll all know that it's the right thing to do for everyone. We won't have to roll the dice if we all are informed. And if we all make informed decisions, we're most likely to make the correct decision. So the biggest thing that you can do, or anyone can do, is to educate yourself and help educate others.
Sorry.
You go.
Bouncing off of what you were saying, Rowan, I agree with what you're saying. However, I also think that we need to realize that there are individuals in the world who know that what they're doing are incorrect, and regardless of how incorrect their actions are and how detrimental it is for everyone else, they are going to continue to do what they do regardless, because they're selfish human beings. And I think we need to keep that in mind as well. Obviously, we want to be optimistic and think that everybody would come to their senses in terms of wanting to come together to form a better world for people that are going to come in the future. However, I don't think that's possible if we continue to have people that are denying just even the straight fact that there are issues involved in our environment and involving our impact on it.
No, I totally agree. I just hope we would educate ourselves about them as well.
Wait, so sorry to interrupt you, but
Mick, I believe you wanted to say something.
I just think it's interesting. I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about the Paris Agreement, which is obviously very important, but I think it then falls back on what each individual does and what each individual country does. And unfortunately, I live in a country where we're not pulling our weight at all. Australia is one of the worst responders to climate change in the world, and per capita, we're one of the highest emitters of CO2, and so I'm right in the middle of it, like the Americans on this call. You're also right in the middle of it, and so what do we do about that as individuals and people who want to live in our countries? And I've been listening to. I think it is true that it's individuals who educate themselves and then educate people in their own communities, and then when it comes time to vote and elect the right people that are going to get us to the right place, because I think this is an emergency. There's no doubt about that. I think everyone on this call would agree that this is an emergency, and it's a matter of how we communicate that emergency and get the right people into positions that make the right decisions based on this emergency. And I don't want to hop on with my colleagues in Europe, but there are countries in Europe that are really, setting the example by, declaring, when they are going to become carbon neutral. I mean, there are governments already really stepping up and declaring that it is possible. Now, I know their circumstances in small countries in Europe are very different to the large land masses and populations that that you have in America and we have in Australia, et cetera, but there are countries that are stepping up and stepping up to the plate and saying, no, we can become carbon neutral. But I think, I guess, I know you guys have got an election coming up, and I know not all of you are able to vote, but really there are alternatives out there. There are legislators and are decision makers that are saying the right things. And it's just a matter of standing up and saying, that's what we want. We want legislators that are going to come in and make the right decisions that are going to avert, avert this emergency that we have.
Yeah, so I guess like from what I understood, it was just like there's only so much we as an international community could do, and sometimes it just comes down to individual like state legislations and country legislations to like decide the course of climate change. But also you brought up an interesting point about voting for people to, what is it called, voting for people that will make a change, but like how much responsibility will fall on the voters, and like what other solutions could voters do besides just elections? But yeah, Lorena, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I want to bring back what Rowan said. I think it's very important. I'm going to give you the example of Bolivia. Last Saturday, I gave a webinar where I was talking specifically of Bolivia and the situation. And one of the examples I can give you, we have a president that we were able to take out after 14 years. He was in power till last year. So it was 21 days of protest in the streets to get him out of the government. He was a dictator, basically, and he's a socialist. He's from the left wing. So he was an absolute disaster. He elaborated a law for Mother Earth, for example, and it's fantastic. The law, as you read it, is fantastic. It says like Mother Earth is the mother of all of us. We are all interconnected, animals, plants, humans. It's terrific. But at the same time, it goes against all the laws we have in place. It goes against our constitution. And the government was the first one to sign all these contracts for mining. They even signed a law taking away the status of protected areas. Like there were protected areas in the Amazon to build a road to be able to transport things and for development, because Mother Earth came underneath development. So this was all a hoax. And the ex-president, in those 14 years, he got so many awards around the world. He was praised by all the international governments. The European Union still defends him to this date. Some of the US politicians say that removing him was a coup. And there's a ton of things being said there. So this is like going to what Rowan was saying. Information, like misinformation, is going so fast right now. And you have to inform yourself. Like, it's not a matter of left, right, center. It's a matter of people. There are evil people. There are good people on both sides. And I think now it's so polarized, it's left against right, and everything from the left is good, everything from the right is good. And that is not true. You have to like find out what's going on, what these politicians, they can say one thing, but you have to see which laws they are passing, who they are supporting, what's going on. Like, talk to the people in each country, find out what's really happening. And I think that is like very important. Like, be informed. Like, if you read something, you see a YouTube video, look for the other side. See what makes more sense. Ask your friends, ask the people living in that country, because it's appalling. Like I said, like big like newspapers and everything, like reading things from my country, from the New York Times, which to me was a very reputable newspaper. It was heartbreaking, because it's like, I'm like, okay, just read the laws he passed. Just dig a little bit deeper. Just investigate a little bit, and you will find the truth. So I think that is very important before you make a decision.
Yeah, so like I'm seeing information is a weapon, I guess, we have to use, and it could be a force for good or evil. And using it as a force for good could be positive to climate change. And honestly, that was very disheartening to hear about Bolivia. Like, hearing like people support a dictator, like, I don't know. But that was a very interesting point that he was socialist. And a lot of people, I guess, especially in capitalist countries, would think socialism is the way no matter what. But at the end of the day, a corrupt government is going to be corrupt, whether it's capitalist or socialist. And Emily, you brought up a very interesting point about redirecting our energy elsewhere. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. Over the last like year or so, my approach to facing climate change and global warming has really shifted to be more, I guess you could say, gentle. If anyone's read Braiding Sweetgrass, sorry, we're currently reading it for a book club on quarantine, but I read it a couple years ago, and it completely shifted a lot for me. But one of the things it did was made me think about how I respond. So when I'm talking to people about climate change, I have such a tendency to just stay in the same spot, and this has just been said, and Lorena was talking about this, but like to be really curious about where other people are coming from, and to, I guess, be as curious with yourself as you wish they would be about themselves. And like, of course, I forget who was saying, I think it might have been Kimmy earlier, but about how there is always there's gonna be people who never get where I'm coming from, is what I mean by it. But I think the more I try to be in that, as ironic as it is, be in that other person's shoes, the easier it is for me to move past where they're coming from, and to stop being so defensive. And by being more gentle with my approach, I'm finding it easier to have conversations with family members who have very different beliefs than me, because I can keep those conversations going for longer without them getting to a point of like that full-on parasympathetic activation, nothing's going anywhere. But it kind of goes back to the individual versus more global or national change. Is like, I think our biggest shift to make is a shift in attitude, and I think we're already making massive strides. even, and it's something it's difficult to see because the reflection of what is going on is, and from what I've heard of in my friends, like younger generations especially, just in my community and my family, but there's definitely people not in my generation who agree. It takes a long time for that to make a reflection in our political and government systems. And I think that's one of the things that humans really don't like. We don't like that slow change, but facing global warming, it's been a well, fast in the time of relative of time compared to how quickly we want to fix it. We're moving very quickly, and I think even though it's like a disaster, we need to be gentle and easy on ourselves in terms of making government change. I think we need to put our foot down if we see we're going in the wrong direction, if we're moving backwards. But in terms of moving forwards, I think we have to expect for some like length between when we're talking and when it's a thing. I don't know if I'm making sense. But.
Oh, you made perfect sense, and I 110% agreed with everything you're saying. Because like I think again, plugging Social Dilemma, really amazing documentary. Please watch it. But it did talk about like the polarization you're talking about exactly, and like how when you attack other people for disagreeing, you're pushing them against the other side. They're not gonna want to come and like solve the solution together. We're just gonna create two opposing sides. We don't want people to disagree whether climate change is real or not. We want to figure out a solution together. So like 110% agree with everything you're saying. And also just like, I guess it relates back to what Rebecca and Mick and Lorena and Rowan were saying earlier, just like about the whole Paris Agreement, like how symbolic it is. The right direction is, we should celebrate that. Like the world moving towards a positive direction together, we should celebrate that. So like, I guess my next question would be, do you guys think government initiatives like the Green New Deal or carbon tax is us moving in the right direction? Or is it actually regressive in tackling climate change?
I think in the current system we have, it's our best short-term option for getting stuff done because like you were saying earlier, Emily, it is hard to expect stuff to happen quickly and to expect like wide-scale social reform in an economic way as well as in like an environmental way. I don't like that ain't gonna happen. It's we got to focus on the environment first, and within capitalism the use of like tariffs and taxes is our best possible decentive, like our decentive for companies emitting like emissions.
Can I jump in on that?
Yes. Also, I love your wall. We both got murals though.
Yeah, we have the same little, yeah. Okay. Thought that was cute. So I somewhat agree on the tariffs and taxes on like carbon taxes and that's really cool. Wow.
Thank you.
But I also think that like I debate with my dad a lot, and it's hard to tell whether he's a devil's advocate or actually his opinions, but he has brought up the point of like just with talking to him and seeing that other people's points of view that way, I feel like people, especially like more leaning towards right winged, is their opinion on the taxes, I feel, would cause more of like it would take us in a step back how they would debate it or like fight it almost, because I know that a lot of people aren't going to want to pay those taxes. And I don't know if you're talking more corporate or if you're talking just individual people, because I know that like if I'm driving to, I don't know, across the country, like, and that's gonna like charge me personally for using gas, like I feel like I would reconsider. But at the same time, like, how are we going to charge for, like, you know, our necessities, like things that we need, like, you know, that need to be transported? I feel like, you know, that could introduce supporting local as well on the other side of that. But, you know, just like on the other side of that, like what you're saying, yeah, it does put a lot of guilt on the individual. And I don't feel like we should punish individuals in that way, because I mean, not everybody can afford electric cars, or you can't bike to big cities. You can't, like, you know, it's hard. I mean, there are ways around it.
So I know a lot about this. I've heard this argument a lot, and my best friend's dad is like also debates with them a lot, and I've also encountered similar arguments. But like, it really is in the best interest of the working class to support these, because first off, the taxes would be more, the ones on the industries like coal and oil would be corporate taxes and not individual taxes. And basically the way the taxes would work is the amount of emissions that they cause, they have a cap, the total that they can cause, and then also there's a rate. Basically the amount of emissions they cause equals the like tax rate that they pay as a company. So those taxes may get floated down the price line and hurt the consumers, but something you can do about that is putting a price ceiling on the producer, which basically says you can't charge more than X or Y, which any capitalist who's obsessed with economic theory will tell you that'll tank a market. If you put a price ceiling on it, remove subsidies, and you have like taxes based on what it does. And that's exactly what it's designed to do. We don't want that industry to survive. We want that industry to tank. And alternatively, well, there were a bunch of subsidies that we were already giving to these industries that are bad for the planet. We could literally just take the subsidies and push it over there. SpongeBob quote. We could literally just put the subsidies directly into green initiatives, which would make it cheaper for the everyman to be green. And we could, including those things, we could push subsidies into renewable travel so that maybe everyone could afford an electric car. We could push those subsidies even better into public transport. You don't even need a car at all, because there's a max line like a mile from your house wherever you live, if you live generally within a metropolitan area of anything. We could do that. We have the money in the government to do that. We just have to take it from the stuff that's destroying the planet and put it into the stuff that helps the planet. They're really trying to make it complicated. They really want it to be complicated. It's really not.
I mean, to just offer like a different perspective, I mean, like there have been people fighting for climate change, like activism in general, for like years and years. So like, I think it is a good way to like simplify the problem, but sometimes when you do simplify the problem, you're kind of ignoring like all of the struggle other people went through in the first place to like even get to this point. I do think like if it was that simple, people would already be doing it, and like the government would 100% already switch towards it. But I get what you're saying. In theory, it is not hard to implement. It shouldn't be hard to implement, but we do live in a society where it is hard to implement because like people's jobs depend on these industries, livelihoods, community livelihoods depend on these industries as well, like not just individual people. So like when we're talking about switching from fossil fuels and non-renewable energy to renewable energy, we can't forget about like the developing countries that depend on these energies and the people, like communities that depend on it as well. But I do echo all your sentiments and agree with that. I just wanted to introduce Kana. She's joining us from Japan, I believe. Kana, if you would like to introduce yourself to the group, and just to update you, we're talking about right now new government initiatives towards tackling climate change.
Hi everyone, sorry for being too late. I need to catch up with the topic. because I didn't, obviously was not there. So
We're just talking about what is it called at the moment, like government initiatives like the Green New Deal and carbon tax, and what we'd like the government to implement and whether these implementations are working at the moment.
yeah, in Japan, governments are trying to lead people, but it's not quite working because they're trying to put the responsibility all to mostly to big companies, but big companies can avoid doing so to I don't know what you call like seemingly working on it. So people have to observe what's happening really, but often people are not paying attention to those things. So we need to have good observation system to like companies or like governments, but I don't know about what kind of systems can work better. That's what I can say right now.
No, yeah, that's okay. Honestly, like we don't have the answers here anyways. We're just trying to exchange the ideas.
I just wanted to point out something like that I remember from the climate change class, and I was like, to me, it was new information. So just switching to electric cars is not going to be enough. 3 things have to happen at the same time, like switching to electric cars, then getting driverless cars, and the third one is carpooling and building cities that are closer together and like rebuilding the transportation system to optimize. Like if these cars are not taking 5 people at a time, it's not going to be enough to have like hundreds of electric cars. So we won't get to the goal if we don't do the 3 things at the same time. So on that topic, I think that's another thing, like besides information, like getting informed and everything, there are experts. Like I think nowadays it's awful when you see the YouTuber, whoever, has more credibility than an expert, a scientist expert in one subject. We have a ton of experts in climate change and in the specific areas. So we have to listen to those people, and those people are the ones that should be running the show. Like, I think that's very important. Like, there's a lot of people that have studied this their whole life that can give us like the solutions and help us with this. So we have to listen to them because they know more than us. So I think that's important.
That's such a good point, Lorena. I really appreciate you saying that. And building off of it, I think that, I mean, I know for me, one of the big things is, as a young person, I didn't think that I could start educating myself on economics and politics when I was young, because that was like an old person conversation. And I thought they were the most boring topics until I took a class that actually taught me the fact, like, what it means to study economics. It means to study people and systems, and like the way that we've created a functioning society. Anyways, and similarly, I think that a lot of the time, moving into this world, as someone who wants to like not only rely on the government but be a big enough part of it that I can be an initiator in change, I want to exaggerate working equally hand in hand with environmentalists and mental health professionals, and like just get like creating a political system, especially in specific around responding to climate change, that is really intersectional, is super important. And that's where all of these other scientists and professionals, we need them in our economic systems, in our political systems, because without them, I mean, it's just a bunch of personalities. And the personalities may be educated, but they're made to be personalities because they're made to be the talking face to lead people. Yeah, kind of a weird point, man, but
I think we're almost done with the conversation. I just wanted to ask one last question, and then people could say closing statements if they want. I just wanted to ask, everyone knows about the Washington wildfires that were happening, and now the California wildfires, Washington destroying almost 1 million acres, California destroying like 4 million acres, ridiculous stuff. I just wanted to ask, like, how much of these fires and other natural disasters that happen, like the Australia fires, and like, oh, actually Mick is here, so he could even talk about the Australia fires too. But like, how much of this is like government irresponsibility, and what could we hope to see to do better in the future?
I firsthand, like, I mean, nothing, like, I didn't see anything burning, but where I live, the air quality got into the like mid to high 500s, and the air quality index is supposed to cap out at about 350, 300, 350. And in other places in Oregon, it got to over 700, which is so there's a scale from like 0 to 300, right? 300 is the absolute max. Like air quality, like 70 is like moderate. It's unhealthy. You should like maybe not go outside a bunch. We were at in certain places over 700, over double the maximum. Like picture a fish tank, right? Fill it with water and then just keep pouring water until you could have filled it again and then some. And that's how our air was for bad. Like me and my family got a box fan and we taped an air filter to the back to like, you know, for like a $15 air purifier, right? And literally within like 2 days, the whole back of it was brown. We did the same thing after the smoke from the fires cleared up, which it's still not entirely gone. The air is like moderate now. It's not back to good air. And Oregon is like known throughout like the United States and even the world for having some of the like cleanest, nicest smelling air. And like we put like an air like a filter on the fan after the smoke cleared up, and it's been white for like 2 weeks. Like just for like reference so that you can like sort of start to wrap your brain around how bad it was. Like we fully couldn't go outside for 2 weeks. When you looked outside, it was gray. You could see the house across the street, the tree in their backyard, and then just gray. Like you couldn't see farther than 100 feet. It was mad.
Yeah, and the wildfires are kind of. There is some. I know when the Washington wildfires happened, like here in Vancouver, the sky was filled with smoke for like a week. It was ridiculous. Like I don't know. But like oh, sorry, Mick, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, it was exactly the same in Australia. I live in a city of, you know, over 5 million people, and for 2 weeks, the city of Sydney, you basically couldn't go outside, and it was very apocalyptic. You know, I'm not exaggerating. It was very, very scary, and you know, if anything was going to draw attention to this emergency, it's going to be these fires. I mean, my goodness, it's such a real life example of what a heating, drying planet looks like. And again, I don't want to be the purveyor of doom, but again, we have a national government that has again refused to acknowledge the signs and continues to encourage the use of fossil fuels. But again, it gets back to the point that we do, you know, we can work as individuals and communities. And I did also want to say, and sorry, I had internet problems, but I did want to say, and just to recap, rewind to your previous question about taxes. I hope that's okay if I can just comment on that, in the sense that taxes in this country, carbon tax in this country, have been incredibly problematic. And in fact, it's brought down governments here in Australia. The whole issue of a carbon tax, the general populace just seems to be allergic to the idea. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. It just seems to be a really, it's like a political time bomb. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I just think that it's something to consider when we move forward, that the idea of a carbon tax doesn't seem to be very popular. not to say we shouldn't do it, but just in a realistic point of view, what I think is popular is the idea that we invest in renewables. And perhaps another way to approach this whole situation is, rather than taxing corporations or making that unpopular, that we encourage our governments to invest in renewables, because clearly the science on renewables is really clear, and there's so much great initiatives going on with renewables that it was just a thought that I just know how unpopular the taxing of carbon is, but somehow investing in renewables isn't so allergic to people.
So like, I guess more
Go for it,
incentives
Omar.
rather than disincentives. No, it's okay. I just wanted to like recap Mick's point, which is just, if I understood, just like instead of taxing, which is going to de-incentivize, we should just invest, which is not really hurting other businesses.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, because I personally think that a tariff and a carbon tax is a really good idea, but I've just witnessed over the last decade Australia trying to implement it, and it's just gone nowhere. In fact, it's driven the argument backwards. Whereas there's companies in Australia that are pleading with the government to invest in renewables. They're saying, we'll do it, just give us some help, yeah.
I know the point makes sense. Sorry, yeah, Emma, go.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, Emma, yeah, go. Emma.
Okay. Yeah, like that was a lot better than how I said it, but that was somewhat what I was trying to say. Just like, I think that's probably what could happen. Obviously it's a possibility, but I feel like that might be more what would happen now, as it would like turn, instead of from helping the government, to just completely political, and people just choosing to disagree because it's a leftist idea or whatever. And I think that like it's a step in the right direction, but it's, I mean, from an economic point of view, somewhat, I mean, barely, but like it's a waste of money, because what are we spending? We're spending the money on stuff to allow us to do things rather than stuff that will benefit us in the long run. Oh yeah, and then to just recap, what was the recap question? Sorry.
This question was just about like so Mick answered two questions. One question being the Australia fires, the second one being about the new initiatives by the government.
Right. Oh, yeah, the fires. Here in Banff, I mean, we experienced the smoke for like, I think it was 2 days max. And I mean, obviously it was bad for us, but like, it's not anything compared to what, like losing the homes, losing the land, like everything like that. But like the carbon emissions, I feel like for natural disasters, we can't really control it. But I know the fires weren't completely natural, like they were caused by something. But like volcanic eruptions, I mean, we can't control that, but they're also like, they're not the main issue. And I know I've had arguments where people are like, well, you can't control volcanoes, you can't say that they can't erupt, like you can't control that. But I feel like it's really just adding to everything. So if we can cut down on our part, we can leave room for those natural disasters. Like they can be able to produce that much carbon, like without destroying our atmospheres. Okay, that's my point. Also, I know Jordan wanted to say something, so I'm making sure she can say something at some point.
So I think Rowan wanted to say something, and then Rowan,
yeah, you
Georgia,
can go, Rowan, Georgia. I just wanted to make sure she was able to talk.
I guess like closing statements, and then yeah, so Rowan, Georgia, and then yeah, closing statements.
With the tariffs thing, I feel like we still need to look one step farther, because I feel like the like conservative or whatever political party response to, like, no matter what we do, I think they're gonna twist it and turn it and try to make it into a bad thing, because we're all informed about the issue and we all know this would be good for everybody. but the general population doesn't. And when we try to impose a tax, they're like, this is going to hurt you because you're going to have to pay for more for everything. But if we say we're going to invest in good stuff, then they're going to say, oh, this is going to hurt you because you have to pay higher taxes to the government because they're just investing money that we don't have. And our spending is already way too high. But don't dare defund our military. How could you even suggest it? Like it doesn't matter what we say, they're gonna twist it until it's something bad again. So I think what we need to do is push positive initiatives wherever we can, wherever there's a hole in the gate that they've made that we can slip it through. And we need to work on destroying propaganda. We just need to beat that stuff down, educate ourselves on the way that they control our brains. It's crazy. I took like a semester college course on advertising, and honestly, it was like more a class on propaganda than it was on advertising, but I mean 6-1. Literally the guy who invented like advertising was a propaganda dude, and he was like, hold on, we just need to call it something different so that people aren't as upset by it. Like literally that was his thought process. Like that's what happened. It's like recorded and everything. You can watch a documentary about it. It's crazy. Advertising is propaganda for communism or for capitalism. And the way that we need to, before we can do anything, we need to stop letting them control our brains as a general population. Propaganda. Okay, I'm done. Oh, also listening to Native Americans, our Native American brothers, sisters, and siblings. They've been telling us since we conquered their land that we ain't doing forests right, that we need to have controlled burning. They've been doing it since before we got here. We stopped listening to them. We didn't do it. And that's why the fires were so bad. They literally done told us. We need to start doing that. That's also huge.
100% agree. You can't have climate justice without having justice for Native Americans. And yes, Georgia.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Emma. It's okay. It's my fault for not speaking up. I'm just gonna mention something back to like the electric cars, and then I'll bring it back to the fires. When like the process of actually making things is actually a lot more cheap than people actually think it is. And I understand that there's profit in business, and that's super, super important. And in the end, it's a lot about money. And I don't like it being about money all the time. That's a story for another day. And I think that at what point does it turn into greed? Because people who make the electric cars, they know that it helps the environment. So I don't understand why they make it as expensive as it is, because that reduces the access that people have, in turn reduces the amount of people who actually help the environment by driving electric cars. Fires. I think that the government, I feel like a lot of people will wait for the government to say something before they take action. And I think we need to take matters into our own hands. Yes, the government should definitely be helpful in guiding us, but we as people also need to make sure that we're going on the right path too, if that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Rowan, the First Nations comment, absolutely relate to it so much. I think that honestly, some part of me wishes that Britain never colonized the America, because then we probably wouldn't be half as bad, I hope. So yeah.
I know. Like they just like never lived with like pigs and like threw their poop into the streets, like how many diseases we would have been saved from. Just so many backwards things the Europeans did.
And then that's like a whole conversation for another day. But yeah, so everyone could say their closing statements. Please try to like keep it to like, I'd say 15, 20 seconds, so that everyone can just get through as quickly as possible. And then after the closing statements, don't be like afraid to just hang around. We can still continue talking after. continue talking about climate change, about the US elections, about capitalism in general, whatever you guys want. And I could start off with my closing statement. From what I heard from everybody and like understood was that climate change, we need unity first of all, but we're not going to get as far as we want in international community. So we need to do as much change as we can in our own communities and in our own governments. So hopefully that change will come as soon as possible. Lorena, do you want to say your closing statement?
Yeah, I just wanted like to say, because I think it's important, as I have to be a spokesperson for my country. I think most of the people are not aware that last year, I think it's a year exactly, there was a fire here, and it was human started. It was for agricultural purposes. It was supposed to be controlled fires, but this is absolutely to blame in the government because they passed a law permitting these burns. 13 million acres burned. More than 2 million animals died in this fire last year. And the world didn't say anything about it. And my ex-president won a prize as a protector of nature. So you can see how screwed up it is. So it's the magnitude of that fire, and we have fires this year too, like they're bad, but it's directly linked to the irresponsibility of the government. So there are some like that are caused for climate change and natural causes. But like I said, I think what we talked about and everything, I just want all of you, like, I hope for a better future. I'm very happy that your generation is more aware, I must say, than mine, probably. And I see a lot of talk and I see a lot of hope in that, because I see feisty people willing to speak out and everything. So I think this is terrific. But please listen to the experts, listen to the scientists, inform yourselves, and go fight the fight. And yeah, I think we have to do that.
Yeah, anyone else could speak up if you want. Or wait, is it better if I call or if you guys speak yourself? I call? Okay. Cami, you want to say your closing statement?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much on the same page as everyone here. There's a lot we need to do, and yeah, returning land to Indigenous people, I think, is a big part of that. And I had more thoughts. They're gone now, but yeah, it's like, I think this is a reckoning of sorts, and it's gonna take everybody to really bring about the change that we want and need.
Yes, 100% agree. Emma?
Yeah, I basically agree with everything that's been said. I think taxes are definitely an approach that we could take. I mean, everything has negatives to it. Everything that that will or could be introduced will have backlash. That's just the way the world works. We can't control everyone's opinions. It's not, it's not our choice what they think. But I think all of these approaches could be helpful in one way or another. It was really cool hearing Mick talk about how the taxes worked in Australia, and how that possibly could be how our countries react to it. But yeah, that's basically I'm in complete agreement with everything that's been said.
Honestly, thank you for your insight throughout the conversation, Emma. Really appreciated it. Mick?
Hey, look, yeah, thanks. I'm 59 years old and I'm incredibly heartened by what I'm hearing today. So thank you. it gives me great hope to listen to the young minds and the young thoughts. And we've talked about it all morning, about that really we've got international agreements and we've got governments, but really it all comes down to individuals and communities. And, you know, the things that we can do as individuals and communities are what's going to make the difference, from what we eat to how we drive to, you know, how, I mean, basically we haven't talked a lot about diet today, but I know that, you know, if we ate less meat and got rid of the carbon producing meat production, then, you know, that's going to do a lot towards, you know, solving this emergency. But it gets down to the individual and the communities, and I've taken great heart from today, and yeah, keep up the good fight.
Yeah, thank you, Mick. What is it called? Honestly, it was actually a good insight, just in general. Just we do want the international community to do so much, but we can't always just depend on it, just because of like how unrealistic that could be. Emily?
Thank you. It was very interesting talking to everyone. I just wanted to add, sorry, really quickly, I swear, about from like returning land to the First Nations. I don't think that's enough. I want to, because we've destroyed culture. We've assimilated people, we've destroyed children, we've destroyed history, we've created ongoing trauma. I want to do more than give back the land. I want to put my own resources and my own platforms into educating myself and implementing Indigenous systems of government, of agriculture, because also it's good to recognize that before we as in colonizers, as in European colonizers, it was not a utopia here. There was still fighting, and it was much like more spread out, less populated. The system wouldn't fully work in this big of a society, but there's so many interesting things and crucial things and attitudes that we as a we would really benefit from implementing. I could go more into that, but you know, time's sake. Thanks everyone.
No, thank you, Emily, for that. Honestly, Indigenous deserve so much more than whatever we're giving them. Georgia?
Okay. I don't know. My closing opinion is that I'm really thankful to be part of an activist group, because that gives you a little bit of hope. One thing I can say for sure is that I don't know if you guys get it, but those questions of like, what do you see yourself in 10 years in the future? To me, that's really hard to answer, because if things keep going the way they are going, I don't see being very good in 10 years, and I really want to change that. I really want to, and it's kind of terrifying to say, but I really want to get to a point where I can say in 10 years in the future, there is hope. So that's kind of my position on it, and I think that what everyone said was absolutely great, and thank you so much for sharing.
No, honestly, thank you for coming. Really appreciate all your insights. Rowan?
Final thoughts. First step, educate yourself. Second step, take action. If you want to rebel against capitalism and eat healthier and eat as local as possible, start a garden. Gardening is revolutionary and anti-capitalist. So if you really want to stick it to the man, grow your own food and ride a bike. Not all about violence. And I appreciated talking with you all so much. This has been such a great time. Lots of love to everybody.
Honestly, love your energy, man. Really appreciated the passion. You kept it fresh. Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you all for your contributions, and Omar for being such an amazing host. It's not an easy job, and you did such a great job. Yeah, I guess my takeaway from this is like everything, we live in a chaotic world and nothing is as simple as we would probably like to put it in our black and white boxes. And so I think, you know, it's kind of like both ends, like individual change and putting pressure on institutions and people in power and all of these alternatives we talked about. So I'm really into movement ecology right now, like an idea that everybody has their role to play, whether it's through the arts, whether it's through being a caretaker, whether it's through being working in mental health, gardening. I think it's totally revolutionary. So I feel like we all can have our own unique gifts and creative ways that we can contribute to this in ways that are authentic to us and meaningful to us. So this conversation has me feeling very hopeful. So thank you all for that.
Thank you for coming. And then I think Kana, if you have something to say, no pressure if you don't, because I know you joined late, but if you have something you want to share with everybody.
Can I skip this?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine to skip it, don't worry. I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming. I've learned a lot and I have a lot to think about after this conversation for sure. And echoing everybody, I am very hopeful in the direction we're going in. I'm more hopeful to see like what my generation and how all our generations are going to work together to make this world a better place.